Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. My guest today is Bruce Cryer. Bruce's outstanding and widely varied career began as an actor, singer, dancer in the world's longest running musical, The Fantastics. He played its leading role over 800 times. He's been an author, a photographer, Stanford faculty member, mentor, leadership coach, and top 50 rated thought leader in personal excellence. His passion for optimal health, human performance, and heart-brain coherence found a home when he became a founding director of the HeartMath Institute and later its CEO. He has taught at the business schools of Stanford, Columbia, UC Berkeley, the Nanyang Polytech University in Singapore. He is a cancer and MRSA infection survivor, has had both hips replaced, but he is still dancing and singing. His clients include NASA, the Mayo Clinic, Unilever, the NHS, Cathay Pacific Airways, Johnson & Johnson, and Yosemite National Park. Welcome to Next Level Healing, Bruce Cryer.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. It's a pleasure to be here. And I always feel tired listening to that bio. There's a lot of miles. There's a lot of miles implied by that set of stories.
How did things start out? Because you were at the beginning of the wave that started us understanding so many things about the human body, how thought interacts with material matter. Just take us back in time, because you were really at the forefront. They must have thought you were from the planet Pluto.
Yeah, or another planet with a strange name. But yes, well, I'd had a kind of a personal interest in holistic health, and I remember I was 19 in college and early 70s, and there was a boycott of beef put on by housewives. And I thought, I'm going to support the housewives. I'm not going to eat beef either. And I've decided I would become a vegetarian, at least for a month or two. And then I started studying it and thought, this is interesting. There's something to this. And a lot of the thought about diet was connected to spiritual practices as well. And because vegetarianism related to a lot of Hindu stuff, and that was about meditation and yoga and all this stuff. So I was down a rabbit hole, a whole bunch of rabbit holes and tunnels. And so that interest in holistic health and healing kind of never waned with that. And it started for me in my teenage years. And I moved to California in the late 70s, having had a wonderful career in New York, but feeling like there's more to life than being on stage getting applause. And I wanted to move people to change in ways that could be sustainable, not just entertain people and have a nice memory from the Saturday night in the theater.
How many years did it take to do 800 performances?
Believe it or not, that's only 2 years. We did 8 shows a week. So that's 100 weeks. So that's about about 2 years. Yeah, it was one of the most charming musicals ever written, and it was a love story about a boy and a girl, and guess what role I played? And so, being the male ingenue of a love story of one of the most memorable musicals of all time, it could get a lot worse than that.
Wow.
And I felt incredibly privileged to be in a show that was so memorable and so sweet and so charming. But as I say, I've started to feel like there's a whole other phase to life beyond this. And I started wondering what people's lives were like. I'd see them in the theater loving the show, and I'd be, she looks like a school teacher. I think he's an accountant, and that's their 12-year-old daughter. Okay, lovely little family from Topeka. How is their life? What's it like Monday morning at 9 o'clock? What's it going to feel like? Well, they remember the show in New York. Probably not. That might be a nice memory, but has it changed them? Probably not. Could I learn ways to do that? Maybe. I think that's why I'm here, is to learn and be able to educate and inspire people in certain ways. And so that's how the journey started. And when I got into the heart work and the heart math work specifically, which was right around 1990 when we started, that was life-changing, because it was so much about this intuitive wisdom that many of us have had, that there's more to the heart than just being a pump. And being told that it's just a pump and don't use it when you come to work. Like, what? Are you a parent? How could you possibly say that if you're a parent? Don't use my heart when you come to work. You mean if I have a thought of my daughter, my dear daughter, don't have that thought? Just put it in your head? Like, what? None of that made sense. So The heart math work was to understand really the basis of what the heart really is, and not just how Western medicine has sort of dumbed it down to it's an amazing pump, but it's just a pump.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. So, what were your first tests that you did? Because you've done some extraordinary tests and they've revealed some fabulously enlightening things. But what were like the first tests that you did? What was the first crazy idea you had to start measuring what was going on with the heart?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify, I'm not the founder, but I was there at the very beginning, was part of the people working with some of with the researchers and in the room, I was part of the leadership team and all that. So there were many memorable moments actually, but we got on to through a client of mine that was a corporation that made heart monitoring equipment. We got on to studying something called heart rate variability. As this could sound like we're about to geek out, if it won't take long. The essence is that every human being, our heart is constantly changing speed. We may go to the doctor and they say, "Oh, Tara, you have a resting heart rate of 65 or 75." And we would assume, oh, that means it's 75, 75 pretty much all the time. Maybe it's a little lower when we meditate. Maybe it's a little higher when we exercise. That's actually not the case. What happens is that number they tell you is an average. They didn't tell you that during that time they were measuring, it went from 60 to 65 to 68 to 72 to 75, and then it came back down because the heart is always changing speed because our bodies never know what we will require a moment later. One day, 3 a.m., about 10 years ago, I woke up to the smell of smoke. Not a good thing to wake up to. Jumped out of bed. My heart instantly had to go to 150 beats a minute to make sure the house wasn't burning. Luckily, it wasn't. It was a wildfire 50 miles away, but it was a big enough fire. I'm smelling it 50 miles away. So my point is the heart knows how to instantly speed up because you may need it to save your life. So our heart is always changing speed subtly and changing a lot when it has to, right? So we started studying it because we intuitively believe that the emotions that us humans go through, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed, like who isn't right now in America or in the world, or anxious or worried or overwhelmed, those emotions, intuitively, we would think that's got to be affecting our heart. And so we started studying the fact that your emotional state, if it's on the quote negative side of the spectrum, meaning more of a stressful type of emotion, versus the right side of the spectrum, which would be more of a regenerative emotion, a positive feeling, love, compassion, peacefulness. Those two categories determine the type of pattern your heart's going to beat in. Why does that matter? When we're stressed, it looks like an earthquake. Maybe a super intense earthquake, maybe a mild earthquake, but it's an earthquake. Any stressful emotion, I don't care what you call it, depression, anxiety, anything, the pattern is out of sync. It's not, there's no order to it. Think of any positive emotion, joy, compassion, love, peacefulness. The pattern becomes this beautiful, predictable sine wave. So our own hearts are radically changing speed in response to our changing emotional state. We're the ones who figure that out.
Beautiful. And at the time, that was not known to most doctors, and now it's common medical knowledge to know that your heart rate variability has a lot to do with your ability to live long and prosper, as Spock said.
Exactly, exactly. So that was a big deal. And so the scientists begrudgingly, the cardiologists who didn't believe we had any ability to impact the changing speed of our heart, we said, yes, actually we do. And we can actually teach a person how to do it quite quickly. You have to practice. If we can get you on a bike and show you what to do, but you got to practice to get good at being on the bike. Same with the learning how to manage and control your heart rate. But that was a super big deal because the heart is so significant to our entire body because it's so much more than being a pump, as we and many other researchers figured out. So if we're, as I said, if we're positive, the heart's going to beat in this beautiful sine wave with rhythm, and that's being transmitted to every cell in your body. If you're chaotic, i.e., stressed out for any reason, all that noise that's going on in the heart is also getting transmitted to every cell in your body. Which one do you want?
And what's amazing is that you actually have technology to measure this today. Even simple technology that people can use in their own homes. Is that correct?
Exactly. So we discovered there was software even back then, medical software that could easily demonstrate to a room full of people or to one person these changing rhythms as I'm describing. And as you see it, you start to breathe in a more steady rhythm, and you start to focus on a positive feeling about your cat, about your grandma, about your garden, about your puppy, about anything that you care about. That combination of slowing down the breath a little and focusing on a positive feeling dramatically and instantly changes the pattern of your own heart. It's like, wow, I just did that. Then, of course, you have to practice. But we were using kind of off the shelf software at first to do all our data collection and our research. And then we figured out, well, we could actually create our own version that a health professional could use, anyone really could use. And that piece of first was a computer based version, then it was the device. Now it's an app for phones or devices or anything you want. But it's powerful technology to be able to see your own pattern on the screen of your device and then learn how to change that pattern in real time.
What are some of the studies that you've seen about using this technology, and how have you seen it change people's lives?
Well, let me first say, last count that I knew, there's now over 400 peer review studies on the implications of the techniques that HeartMath teaches on health, well being, brain function. Incredible range of types of studies. But two examples I want to highlight. One that was very profound when it first came out, and partly because it was done at Stanford University with a population of people in their 70s with congestive heart failure. So these are all patients diagnosed with congestive heart failure, meaning their lungs are filling up with fluid. That's the congestion part. And their hearts are failing. That's the failing part. This is a very serious diagnosis. And a psychology professor there was trained in how to teach the heart math techniques to these patients. And it was part of what was so and they had a control group who were learning some mindfulness kind of techniques. And the group that went through HeartMath and were practicing these techniques to manage their emotions and try to put more love into their life, even with a very significant, a very serious diagnosis. The ones that went through the HeartMath had a 25% reduction in their self-reporting of stress, 25% less stress, 33% reduction in depression, which is a huge issue for anyone with heart disease. But the most significant to me was they had a 14% increase in something called functional capacity, which was measured by a 6-minute walk on a treadmill test. So basically, people whose hearts were failing, lungs filling up with blood, are getting stronger.
Wow.
14% improvement in how far they could walk in a 6-minute walk test.
And
So to me,
how much time were they having to put in to master this, and over how long a period of time was it
well, it
looked at?
wasn't even a question of mastery. It was just a question of here's some techniques to practice,
Mhm.
maybe 15 minutes a day, probably less.
Wow.
These are
Wow.
people in hospital that, this is a serious illness. To me, that was one of the most dramatic studies that we ever did, because these are people, if these people are getting help to this degree, who have every reason to be stressed out, every reason to be depressed, they're feeling better, and it's showing up as their body actually getting stronger. So that was a big deal. Another one that was on the other end of the spectrum, age-wise, was high school students. So we won a grant from this Department of Education back 25 or so years ago to study test anxiety in high school age kids, girls and boys, like freshman and sophomore age. And we believed, because there is this link between what's happening in the heart with our cognition. That study had been done numerous times, showing that when the rhythms are the smooth pattern I talked about before, that's like high test fuel going up to your brain. Your brain says, "Thank you, brain. I like that." Whereas when you're stressed out, now noise is being received by the brain, so you're not going to process things as well. So in this study, we were teaching the kids using technology to manage the rhythms of their heart and then see how they did on tests. And it turns out there was, in fact, a connection between test scores and the degree of anxiety they had. So the kids who were able, as girls were especially good at this, not surprisingly, much better than the boys. Girls who could improve their anxiety quite a bit, also their test scores went up. There were some girls who didn't have much anxiety, but just learned how to get their heart into the smoother rhythm, which is then improving their brain's ability to function. And lo and behold, their scores also went up. So it's a very interesting study.
That's remarkable. At what age do you think a child should be introduced to this?
As soon as they can understand concepts. I mean, we've
Okay.
worked, there is the HeartMath Institute now has curricula for pre-K age kids because with children, it's a lot easier to relate to a lot of these concepts. The idea of thinking about your bunny, thinking about Nana, thinking about, it's not hard for a kid to feel their heart. Thinking about an ice cream cone. Oh boy, it's not, this is not, think of something soft and fuzzy. No problem.
Wonderful.
And so getting them in their heart's not the problem, and their mental faculties are not nearly as sophisticated yet. So it's not like they're getting stuck in their head, like, I'm skeptical of this technique asking me to focus on my bunny. No, the kids just want to do it. It sounds fun. So it's more like how early the kids have such a natural inclination to want to respond with their heart. That it's actually fun and relatively easy with kids. In fact, be careful what you ask for because my own daughter at a very young age would point out when her mom and dad were arguing, guys, you need to get in your hearts.
Mm. Was that useful advice to hear?
Well, in the moment, some checkmate. Okay.
Mhm.
I guess I have to grow up. Okay.
I heard you describing a realization that you had along the way. You obviously were highly intelligent, highly accomplished, but you noticed that one of your colleagues, just people gravitated to that person much more. And you realized that there was an opportunity for you to I I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to be more in your heart and come from that space so that you were able to have deeper relationships. Can you tell us about that transition?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that story up. It was a very interesting phase from my life. So, having had a career on stage, I was always very comfortable in front of an audience. The acting career, I was never playing myself. I was always playing a character, even if the character was similar. Always somebody else. So I was kind of looking forward once HeartMath started. Oh, I want to facilitate because I'm already pretty comfortable in front of an audience, but now I get to talk about something that's meaningful to me. But I found that because habits die hard sometimes, it was hard to kind of let go of a certain performer persona. And I was noticing this other guy on our team who had a tremendous amount of sincerity. He could just kind of flow into a beautiful poem or a quote by Rumi or Tagore or whoever it might have been. And I just kind of observe, and it felt like people are feeling him differently, and people enjoyed me. I mean, they were often very complimentary, and I'm feeling like I don't think I'm connecting as deeply to people as he is. And there's a sincerity to him that I need more of. And I thought I'm not actually speaking enough from my actual heart. I don't mean the organ, but the part of me that is the core of who I am. I'm not doing that enough. I'm too much about okay, I'm good on stage and all that. And so it began a process of kind of listening to myself more and paying attention to, am I really speaking from my heart right now? Or am I saying something because I've led 300 workshops already, and so I know how to say these lines? And so that produced a change. But then, of course, I also, as you, I'm sure I've read, went through a couple of years of very serious health issues, cancer, staph infection in my blood, which is life threatening, double hip replacement. My mother passed away. My marriage was ending. I had like the inverted bucket list, all the things you don't want to have happen in a short amount of time. And that was very sobering, obviously, and humbling, and required a lot of surrender on my part, a lot of letting go on my part. And I began to notice after that period had ended that and I shared about it. I've shared publicly in front of large groups or small groups about a lot of what I went through. And people would like see me in a whole nother way. Like, wow, you went through all of that. and had both your hips replaced as well. Wow. They would just see me at a whole nother depth. But I was also being very genuine about and very vulnerable about what all I had gone through. So it was a process. It wasn't like one day suddenly I'm feeling that much more connected. But I noticed over time, as my own experience of myself, my own presence deepened to really speak from my heart much more. It was really noticeable how much more attention people were paying, not just because I was well spoken, but because I was communicating at a depth that was touching them.
We could all use more of that. We would all be more effective, I think, if people were hearing us from our hearts. What would be like a little cheat sheet you would give people as instructions to be more felt from the heart?
Well, there is something to be said for literally trying to speak from the heart, literally meaning, like, as I'm speaking right now, I'm conscious of my voice kind of coming through here, not just from up here or from up here. And so that's kind of a practice. Now I'm a singer, so I have that to kind of boost my focus on it. But that process is very, very useful. And I think something that ties into that is, and it relates to a heart math technique, is the idea of literally breathing in and out through your heart, as though you could breathe in through the chest. We obviously can't. We're breathing up here, but focus the energy there as you inhale, and focus the energy there as you exhale. Helps to get the voice you're speaking from connected to the heart too, because you are literally activating your heart with the breath in a specific way. And we figured out, because there was this fact in science, that when you're breathing in about a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale, there's a name in science for that called the respiratory sinus arrhythmia, RSA. The term means nothing to this conversation, but the significance of it is that when you're in that rhythm, the breath and the heart are synchronized. So you are more efficient. And we feel like, oh yeah, that feels really good. So we would teach people, do that. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Not mechanical. Do a gentle rhythm. If you're doing that, and now this means you're literally bringing more attention to your heart itself. Over time, you become more sensitive emotionally to yourself. You start to notice anxiety sooner. You start to notice fear. You start to notice appreciation. After my cancer and all that stuff was over, I was like so much more alive, so much more. Oh my God. Well, number one, I did survive a couple life threatening conditions. So a sense of I'm still here. Wow. But also part of that was I had spent a lot of years trying to live from my heart. And so the breathing, as simple as that sounds, as sophomoric as it could sound, just bringing our attention to the heart periodically and breathing gradually in and out through the heart sensitizes that system, awakens that system more. So we pay more attention to, wow, now I'm talking from my heart now. This is good. Again, I don't mean it just physically. I mean it like I'm connected to the feelings of what I'm really feeling, not just a script.
Do you think you would have made it through those illnesses and challenges as well, or even at all, if you hadn't had these skills to your name?
That's a great question. I did notice a number of times when I'd come out, I'd see somebody after a surgery or after a treatment, and I'd get the comment, "You're looking so much better than I was expecting." And my response would be, "How bad did you think I was going to look?" Because I'm not exactly feeling chipper. It was bladder cancer, dude. This was not a fun procedure. But as I got more comments like that, I realized I have a lot of resilience in spite of all this that I'm going through. All these years trying to live from my heart, trying to be kind and be generous and be thoughtful and be considerate, having no idea what other people go through, but try to give people the benefit of the doubt. That was topping up my tank, so to speak. That was filling my bucket with more resilience. So even though I went through a fairly harrowing set of experiences over a few years, it didn't take me out, and people could see that. Like after my hip surgery, there was one picture, and somebody said, "You didn't have your hips. You look like you were in Maui, dude. You look so relaxed." I said, "Well, thank you."
Beautiful. So you have a laundry list of leading companies that have reached out to work with you. What did you teach them that they found to be so valuable?
Well, everything I'm talking about kind of was part of a presentation, but a fundamental principle was that getting our heart and brain literally entrained or in a more coherent relationship with each other benefits you in your company. Whatever the work is that you do requires a smart brain. And that brain is often compromised by emotions that we don't know how to manage, that we're unable to regulate. So when you're able to regulate your emotions more, partly through the breath, partly through consciously practicing more appreciation, more gratitude, consciously slowing yourself down to truly listen to another person so that they feel heard, not just you listen long enough to get your point in, but listen long enough to make sure they feel heard. These are some of the concepts and techniques that have been part of the organizational work. So there is both a focus on helping people become more sensitized to when they're their own worst enemy, when they are the one causing the stress in their system by overreacting, getting triggered by very predictable things that they do all the time, and they keep being shocked. We all do this. Yet we have a person in our life that bugs the s out of us, and I say, "So how many times have they done that behavior that's so annoying to you?" 500. And you're still reacting like you're shocked. Now who's the problem?
Good one.
The
Very good
one who
one.
keeps reacting. So we all have predictable things. I call them predictable stresses. We can predict them, and if we can predict them, we can prevent them. If you know you're gonna see that person that has pissed you off for 500 times, okay, it's time for you to prepare and not allow yourself to get pissed off. Like the shock, really, that they said that thing again?
Good point.
So little things like that become, "Oh, yeah, wow, I'm spending energy uselessly on something like that."
So these companies, they were looking to what make employees healthier, less sick days, able to function better with other employees at work.
Those are all topics. I mean, we measured all kinds of things. We've measured productivity on factory floors. We've measured the number of patents being written by software teams. We've measured actual healthcare costs going down in healthcare organizations like hospitals. Retention is often a huge issue. We found that introducing these concepts about the heart with tools to help the clinical staff, the nurses on the beds at the bedside, the doctors in the operating room, how they can manage themselves. It resulted in fewer people resigning from the hospital, quitting. It resulted in patients feeling much better care, much more higher patient satisfaction. So over the years, we were data geeks. We loved to collect data every way we possibly could. So we would be collecting data, some of which was more soft, meaning emotional. I'm not so angry. My sleep is better, quite a bit better. So we had a combination of data that was both self-reported as well as metrics that the organization might be tracking. So depending upon what the organization needed, we would tailor the intervention to or the program to kind of fit the needs of the people, knowing that virtually everybody in any organization is feeling more stress than they want to feel.
So, having had this remarkable career spanning decades of being in the world's longest running musical, CEO of HeartMath, working with the Mayo Clinic, NASA, Johnson and Johnson, if you had a megaphone and the whole world was listening, what would you like to say?
What a great question. Well, I keep coming back to this phrase I've used a lot, and the phrase is love is never wasted. Love
Mm,
is never wasted. And it sounds like a sweet aphorism, but biologically, the more you can love instead of being angry or instead of hating, you are in such better condition than if you're hating or angry. So love for your sake. So that's one of the reasons love is truly never wasted, even if it is having no impact on the person seems to be the cause of the problem, or the group, or the government, or the state, or whatever it may be. It is never wasted, because even if they don't acknowledge it, even if they don't change, you have done something for yourself that is so much better than the alternative. The biochemical downside of hate and anger and frustration is huge, and it's behind a lot of a huge amount of the chronic illness in the world. Whatever about diet, whatever about additives, we are the biochemical factor we have to worry about.
I love that. And what percentage of people would you say have a huge stumbling block on self-love?
Yeah, I mean, a very large number. That even the term itself causes trigger reactions in a lot of people because it's like that sounds so selfish. Like how narcissistic can you be? What do you mean self-love? And my point is, like I just illustrated with that example, loving when you could be hating or anger ends up being self-love, because in the process of putting love out to that situation that is worrying you or angering you is literally going through your body. That is self-love. Self-love does not simply mean sit there in meditation and just, oh, I love Bruce, I love Bruce, I love Bruce. It's way more than that.
Tell us about some of the neurotransmitters that get released in the brain. That I mean, you're right. I mean, the brain is like the best pharmacy there is on the face of the earth, and it's free. So, what are some of the What are some of the changes that occur in the brain when you're more in a state of love and less in a state of hate?
Wow, you want to name neurotransmitters? That's
All
the
right,
that may be the
maybe I
first time on an interview I've ever been asked to do
really
that. Well, I mean, yeah, I may have
dopamine
been.
and serotonin
Maybe
and
I'm blanking it out. Yeah, well, I mean, they're all the ones that all the dopamine and all kinds of endorphins and now interestingly, one of the things that has shifted is that a lot of times, a lot of these biochemicals we call neurotransmitters are not necessarily produced in the brain. Like many are there are a variety of places where neurotransmitters are produced, and oxytocin is a great example. Oxytocin we always thought was produced in the brain. It's actually also produced in the heart in significant
mm,
quantities, which is part of the reason why mothers and babies there's that connection. And it's not only for mothers. I think when my daughter was handed to me and she was 5 minutes old, I think my heart was producing copious amounts of oxytocin at that moment. I will never forget it, even though she's now 38. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a significant cocktail. And I mean, an example back to the example with stress is that we learned in the early 90s that any stress reaction produces a cocktail of around 1,400 biochemicals. The big name ones, cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, those guys and 1,397 cousins, all of which are being produced because we think there's a threat. So we've got to get the energy to fight that thing or to flee or to cower, whatever, fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. But conversely, anytime we're feeling joy, feeling happiness, feeling gratitude instead of the others, or feeling love, another cocktail of about 1,400 being produced in the body that make us feel like, wow, I feel great. Like I often use the example. Think of some time when somebody appreciated you and it was a surprise. I just had this experience. I was just talking literally 15 minutes, well, hour ago, with a dear friend of mine. I've known her probably close to 20 years, early onset Parkinson's disease with this woman. She's in her early 50s. She just said to me, she's on disability, cannot work, cannot take a paycheck. She said, "You have meant so much to me in my life. I want to volunteer to do anything you need me to do." I said, "What?" What? Now that's an unusual experience, but my point was like completely out of the blue, my dear friend appreciates me in a way that just completely touched me. Well, in this moment, if we want to go to the biochemistry, my body is producing all these other hormones, not the ones that would have happened had she threatened my life. So we are a biochemical factory. And so our brain, I mean, a lot of the research that we did and others have done too, is that when there's this coherence in the heart, because the heart is by far the dominant electrical system in the body, 40 to 60 times more powerful than the brain electrically. It's hundreds of times more powerful magnetically. It's the big power plant. Name another organ that pulses. Name one.
I
Right.
can't think of one of pulses. However, there's been a lot of research about the gut being also like a second brain.
Yeah, and it is. So, but my point is simply about the heart is that as we change the heart, and as happens when we're engaged in more positive emotions, we're changing the biochemistry of what's going on. So the brain is now receiving a whole different cocktail than it would if we were still stuck in the stress. And so the biochemistry is dramatically changing. And 40 years ago, before HeartMath was even around, it was understood that when the heart's in this chaotic rhythm, like an earthquake, those those kind of chaotic signals are being sent to the brain. The brain's receiving that drumbeat, that chaotic drumbeat, literally, and it gets inhibited. And the term cortical inhibition was coined to explain what happens to the brain when it's receiving this noise from the heart. The heart's not doing it randomly. It's because you're upset, you're anxious, you're worried, you're frantic. The research also showed when you change, and now you're in a more positive state, you're breathing through your heart, you're loving life, it's a beautiful day, whatever you're feeling. Now the brain is receiving it, saying, thank you. Now I can do my job very nicely. And they coined the term cortical facilitation, meaning the cortex, 80% of your brain, is now able to be synchronized. The thought moves more easily, more creativity. We did studies in the UK some years ago with fMRI diagnoses, where we're looking at what's happening in the prefrontal cortex of the brain when you're in a state of coherence in the heart or not. When you're not in a state of coherence, not much activity up there, noise. When you're in a state of coherence, thanks to feeling more appreciative, more peaceful, more happy, even funny things that go on, that energy in the biochemistry allows the prefrontal cortex to kind of light up. Now all this activity is going on. It's very dramatic. It's not subtle. Active when you're in your heart, inactive, and then that translates into inactive, also meaning bad decision making, saying things you regret. And you can't unsay that thing that you said to your partner. And now you're in jail for the next 6 months because they can't forget that you said that.
Or not seeing opportunities that are right in front
Or
of
not
you.
seeing opportunities. All that.
Yeah. It almost reminds me of insulin resistance. You get too much sugar in the body, and then the cells are like, sorry, we're done taking information. And the prefrontal cortex seems to have that same ability when it's under assault from
Yeah.
negativity and hatred to just basically shut down and not play anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. All that is all part of it. So to me, the idea of, quote, following the heart ends up being super practical because the heart is all these other things. It's not just a pump. And and to your point of the brain and the gut, which is, last I heard, 100 million neurons. Well, the heart's only got maybe 100,000, but it's got 100,000 neurons processing information locally in the heart, hundreds, tens of thousands, all processing information. The heart's got its own intelligence that's able to then impact the big guy upstairs.
My understanding is that the heart has been shown to be 5,000 times more electromagnetically active than the brain. Is that correct?
There are a lot of numbers that are thrown out. Some of them are really huge.
Uh-huh.
And the latest that the people from HeartMath say, which I think they can produce with firm evidence, is like 100 to 150 times.
Mm.
Forget the 5,000 one. That's been played around a lot. Just think about the 150.
Okay.
If-
Still way
It's
more.
still way more. Yeah. So, and maybe it's more than that. And of course, at some level, it's not stopping at that. There's no actual endpoint. It's more like the endpoint of the technology to measure. It's not the endpoint of the field. So who knows how far it's actually going, what the impact really is. But the current equipment to measure can definitively pick it up,
I have a really random question. Recently, we had Dr. Richard Bandler on Next Level Healing, and he talks about this study that I believe was done at HeartMath where you guys measured yogurt and its response and put it in two different places and fed one of them, and the other one reacted as if it was happy because it was by, what would you call it, by osmosis, experiencing the same. Do you know that study very well?
I've not worked there formally for a number of years, and that could have happened since you're not the first person that's brought that up. And I'm sure it's true. I mean, the premise of the study, there's so many wild things. I mean, there was a study that HeartMath did at one point, with a very small group, but it was about the intuition of the heart. And it was discovered that the heart is predicting events several seconds before they happen. The heart can tell the emotional nature of an event before it happens. And how this study was managed was you sat in front of a computer screen computer screen, pardon me. I was one of the subjects, so I remember vividly what it was like. And you pressed you clicked the mouse, which then 6 seconds later, an image randomly appeared on the screen. The computer didn't know, you didn't know. You were being monitored. Your heart rate variability was being monitored. Your brain waves were being monitored. GSR, every blood pressure, fully wired. I remember vividly. You're sitting there not sure what the next picture was going to be. The first one might be the Alps with daffodils. The next one could be a dog getting killed. The next one could be an ocean. The next one could be two people having sex. You had no idea what the next one was going to be. And so you clicked the button and then you waited a number of seconds. It turns out that several seconds before the image appeared on the screen, the heart was anticipating the emotional feeling of that image.
That's shocking. And neither the machine knew nor the participant.
Exactly.
So that would imply that the heart has some
Intuitive
really
knowing, some
precognition.
way of sensing something at some level.
It
Again,
sounds like
the events hadn't even happened yet and were random. So a lot of people say, well, then you're probably dealing at the quantum level, and probably so. Probably we're dealing at some energetic level of predicting a reality that may or may not happen. It gets kind of crazy. But the main point I think that's exciting is you've got a sensory system in you. It's so much more than a pump. It's picking up all kinds of information all the time. And the gut does too. I'm not dissing the gut. The gut's an incredibly important sensing system to feed information to the brain as well. So part of what's been cool to me is this notion that like 30 years ago when computers only were mainframes that sat in basements and we didn't have anything on our desk, that was also our model of human intelligence. Big computer upstairs, everything else is dumb, following commands of the big thing upstairs. Computing is nothing like that anymore. You have more computing power in a phone than we used to have in the downstairs massive computer systems. Intelligence is distributed. Intelligence in the human body is also distributed. There's brain in the heart. There's a brain in the gut. There's intelligence in cells. There's memory throughout the body that's not just confined to the brain up here. So it's more like we are distributed intelligence. We as humans are distributed intelligence. And that which we can measure exists inside of us. But then there's all this other stuff that we can't necessarily measure yet.
And how are you applying this to your work today? Are you coming out with a book? What books have you already written that you recommend? How can people be involved with this? How can they learn more? How can they benefit from all the wisdom that you've gleaned over the decades?
Thank you so much. Well, I did write a book called From Chaos to Coherence, The Power to Change Performance. It's a book on the corporate applications. So when you mentioned those various client names, a lot of those are stories in the book that I wrote. So it's basically how do you take these ideas about the heart and the brain and breath and emotions and apply that in the context of a hospital, the context of an engineering company, an oil company, all of which have been clients of, in the case of NASA. Interestingly, the lady from NASA that I worked with for years just reached out to me the other day saying, we need to talk again. I've been retired for 15 years. So, but I wrote that book From Chaos to Coherence, The Power to Change Performance. It's under my name and another author. My work now, I continue to teach about these heart coherence concepts, guys. I find it, if anything, more relevant than ever. We are in incredibly stressful times with the volume of input on us is unprecedented in my lifetime. And I think we all would agree with that, the number
And
of
I think it's only going to get worse.
it's only going to get worse. Exactly. So there's no sense of, well, at least I can get through this because once we get to 2026, it's all going to be fine. Oh, really? No one's thinking that. So there's this sense of it's getting worse and worse and worse. So I've developed a principle I call vibrato. And I won't go into all the detail around it now, but it's basically acknowledging that we as a species are accumulating more stressful energy than ever just by living, just by turning on or even turning off the news. I don't care if you choose to not ever watch the news. You are still part of a species that is feeling levels of fear and shock and horror more than ever. You're going to feel that on some level. You may not be conscious of it. So as a result, my belief, and I believe this is more than a belief, is that we need to offload more frequently. We need to have ways to release. A lot of us are way too sedentary. We're sitting in chairs. We're in an L shape all day long. That's not what we were designed to do. We're designed to play and dance and do other things, not just be mental all the time and in front of technological devices. So to me, it's all part of helping people kind of get back in touch with the true self that they are, but also recognizing we are filling up with energy that is not helpful to us. And if we don't have ways, so I've developed some techniques for kind of the release, like the concept of a sigh of relief, which I will never forget when I had a test done after my cancer surgery and was waiting for the results and was pretty confident everything was going to be fine and felt like the surgery was a success. My doctor was very rosy about the whole thing. And I was waiting for the call, and the doctor finally calls, and I got the good news. Bruce, hey, great news. The test came back negative. My whole body went, oh, thank God. That's a sigh of relief. That's a mechanism in our body built into our physiology to release. And most of us are not using it.
I think that signals the vagus nerve that it's over.
Exactly. So I encourage people through the work I do now to practice something to do that, to let go. We need to let go and then keep letting go. And then just when we think we've let go enough, let go some more, because otherwise we're holding on to it. It's going to age us. And we're not going to make the kind of decisions. We're not going to have the relationships we want to have.
Beautiful. If you were able to go back and talk to 10-year-old Bruce, what would you say to him?
10-year-old Bruce. At 10, I had a significant injury and I wasn't allowed to run and jump for about 2 years. And it was really weird and awful. And if somebody had told me, you will get through this and you will be a dancer and you will be a singer and you'll be enjoying life in ways you can't imagine right now, when you feel like your whole world is shut down because you can't be on the Little League team, you can't even go bowling, but it's all going to be okay, kid.
Yeah, that's kind of what we all need to hear, right? It's going to be okay, kid.
So I am so honored to have you here with us today on Next Level Healing. Is there anything else you'd like to say that people could reach out to you, find you? Where do they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I use my name everywhere. So no company name, or so it's Bruce Cryer on LinkedIn. It's Bruce Cryer on Instagram, Facebook. I have a YouTube channel that actually has the name Renaissance Human, but my name is there too. But it's there. And so you find me. I'm fairly active in these various places, and I'm out there publicly. I do workshops here and there. I work with companies. I work one-on-one a lot with executives, founders, people that need help and realize we're a whole system. If I feel like I need to change my career, that's probably not the whole story. There's probably some other pieces that need to come along,
Awesome.
So I love working with people around the themes of reinvention and personal renaissance, and because of what I've experienced.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Share this with people who need this message. And thank you so much, Bruce. And we look forward to seeing all of you on the next episode of Next Level Healing.
Thank you so much.
This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.